Hello, Senator Whitehouse. Thank you so much for being live with me tonight on Facebook. I'm so grateful for you joining me,
I'm
especially,
happy to do it, Amy.
thank you, especially in the midst of everything that's going on. I think it's so important that we're having these conversations. And I just want to give everyone a little introduction, if you don't mind if I read a quick overview of your bio, although it will
Long
not
as
do
it's
justice.
quick.
Senator Whitehouse has been at the center of bipartisan efforts to pass laws overhauling federal education policy, rebuilding our nation's infrastructure, reforming the criminal and juvenile justice systems, protecting Americans from toxic chemicals in everyday products, and addressing ocean plastic waste. Senator Whitehouse is also a leader in environmental protections, addressing climate change, and so much more. And you represent the great state of Rhode Island. So I'm so glad to have you on and talk about the intersection of COVID-19, the fight for racial equality, and the fight to protect our environment. And I'm glad you could take the time tonight. It's so beautiful out tonight. How are you doing?
Pretty well, actually, although coming down from Rhode Island,
Yeah.
which is still cool and beautiful and clear. And actually, the ocean water is pretty cold because we've had a cold spring.
Yeah.
Down to hot, steamy, muggy Washington is no treat. It's like a 25-degree differential, and it's less than an hour by air.
Oh, I can imagine. Did you fly?
Yeah,
What is that like right now?
it varies. Sometimes you're packed in a little bit more than you'd like.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's plenty of room, but people by and large are responsible
Mm-hmm.
about wiping down seats and about wearing masks and so forth. So I think I'm taking a small chance by flying, but I think it's a manageable risk and it's worth doing.
Yeah, I was worried about the flight attendants in the beginning of this. It didn't seem that they were requiring passengers to wear masks, and it felt just really dangerous for all of the people that were kind of frontline workers there as well. And I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear
But
people.
I figure if they can do it, I can do it.
That's right. Absolutely. I know it's such a long day for people working in that industry to wear a mask all the time. My brother's a pharmacist in a grocery store, so he's got a mask on all day long, and has the acne around the face to prove it. It's one of those things. But
Yeah.
I was hoping yeah.
I was just going to say, and there's a big difference between wearing a mask in Rhode Island, where it's still cool,
Yeah,
and wearing a mask in Rhode Island, in DC, where it's hot. It's
that's
a whole
right.
different experience.
Well, I've been to your beautiful state,
I
and
know.
I live right by the ocean here in New Jersey, and we are obviously known as the Garden State, and so there's a lot to protect here when it comes to the environment, and a lot of opportunity, I think. But right now, we're talking about the virus and maybe how you could give us a little introduction of how you see that intersecting with the pandemic and the virus, and if there's any correlation at all, or am I just grasping at straws when I say that, or is there really something there?
I think the coronavirus pandemic and climate change link up in a couple of ways. One is that um, climate denial brought into government a very unpleasant anti-science,
Mm.
anti-government ideology. And when people think of that ideology in the climate space, it may seem a little bit remote, and it may seem that it's part of a debate about climate change. But when you take that same ideology and now you apply it to the pandemic, and
Right.
you see what a complete mess the Trump administration did of managing this early on, and
Mm-hmm.
how many completely bogus scientific claims the president has propagated,
Yeah.
I think it brings the immediacy of what is wrong with an anti-science, anti-government ideology right home in a way that climate change was sooner or later going to bring it home, but this makes it immediate.
Yeah.
And I think that helps us move forward on climate. I also think that the economic recovery that we're going to need coming out of this, once we're done with COVID specific legislation, I hope and expect that we'll do a significant infrastructure bill. And that infrastructure bill gives us the chance to make big, big, big investments
Yes.
in climate, green energy, renewables, and so forth.
I love that. Yeah. We really, South Jersey, maybe we'll get into that a little bit, but South Jersey has really struggled. Our economy's struggled for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're looking, that is the question on the front of so many people's minds, is how do we get some high quality, good paying jobs here in our area where infrastructure is really lacking? And what would, maybe I can jump into that and come back to where we were since we're talking about it, but what do green jobs look like? What does that mean when we're talking about green jobs, and what type of degree do you really need to have? Are there green jobs kind of for all levels, or do you see this as just kind of for people that have a 4-year degree?
I think, there are green jobs that are actually just jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They're green because of where you're doing the work and what kind of work you're doing. So if you're re-landscaping and restoring wetlands along the Jersey Shore, for instance, or along the Rhode Island shore, you could be doing that work for anybody. It's green work because it's happening for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who are driving the heavy equipment, the landscapers who are bringing the plants to restock, all of that kind of could be anywhere. That's just a real job.
Right.
Then there are more specific green jobs that have to do with green technologies like solar installation, and in the case of Rhode Island, offshore wind.
Mm-hmm.
And there we're seeing real opportunities. We're seeing a lot of training that we're starting to put together for when the big build begins. We're seeing even simple things like a Rhode Island boat builder had to make a new boat for the people who are going out to work on our wind turbines, our offshore wind turbines.
Right.
So you had, kind of green jobs, blue jobs anyway, building the boat to ferry the workers out to the turbine offshore. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of work that is to be done here. I think the last point I'd make about this is these jobs are the jobs of the future. This is the way we are going. The prices of solar and wind are coming down so fast, it is going to displace solar, is going to displace fossil, and we have to prime our economy to take advantage of those jobs so that the construction, the building, the manufacturing, the design, the preliminary science, all of those things are done here in America.
Right.
Importing it at the end of the chain from, let's say, China.
Right. So if we're heading in that direction anyway, do we want those parts to be made in the United States? Are we preparing for that? Are we preparing for that technology? I love that thought. We've talked a lot in District 2 about wind energy, and it's been approved and the plans are ready just outside of Atlantic City to have offshore wind. And that's a really exciting project and a very necessary project for our area. I've been told lots of times, I never saw the episode, but I've been told that Brigantine, where I live, is the windiest city on the East Coast, and that was a Jeopardy question. I don't know if that's what I heard.
I did not know that.
We all tell each other that if you live in Brigantine anyway. So whether it's true or not, that's our local myth. What I did see in living here is that when we were hit by Sandy, that it really has impacted a vulnerable population in South Jersey that has been affected because they really could not afford to rebuild the flood insurance that's necessary. We've seen classes and schools kind of diminished on the shorelines. There's still a lot of people that can come in from out of state and afford to live in beach houses, but as far as our public schools, they've been drastically reduced in beach communities. And places like Atlantic City really had a hard time following Sandy. Do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about how you see climate intersect with poverty and vulnerable populations, and what we could be doing to really make this more of an issue that we're talking about?
Well, first of all, you are dead right that coastal communities are vulnerable populations.
Mm-hmm.
And the less resources they have, the more vulnerable they are.
Yeah.
You have Freddie Mac, the huge mortgage giant, which is not an environmental organization, warning that we're going to have a massive shakeout in coastal property values as it becomes harder and harder to insure and to mortgage a seafront property because of sea level rise and worse storm risk. So when you've got Freddie Mac warning about that, that's pretty serious. If it's somebody's second home, if it's somebody's third home, if the person is a millionaire, that's one set of problems, and it's really unfortunate. But if that's somebody's only home, and it's the place where they live, and it's where their community is, and it's not a high income community, then it becomes really, really bad when the bottom falls out of that housing market, because very often that house is the family's biggest asset. Yeah. So it creates a lot of pain, and it's a very important reason to get ahead of the climate change problem and treat it seriously before those worst case scenarios begin to emerge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, right. Because leaving South Jersey isn't an option. So what should we be doing right away to lessen the impact and also prepare for rising sea levels? What kinds of investments, infrastructure investments, work, and how do we even be more preventative to intervene earlier?
Yeah, well, the twofer that I recommend and have legislation to accomplish is, one, to put a price on carbon pollution, mm-hmm. because not to do that is to give fossil fuel a huge unfair advantage and to treat people unfairly who have to suffer the harms, like the coastal communities, the harms of the fossil fuel damage that gets done. And that's a big number. That's $600 billion a year just in America, according to the International Monetary Fund. And yeah, I said billion with a B. Yeah. So if you don't offset that, you're never going to give renewables a fair chance. You're always going to be subsidizing fossil fuel, and you're going to end up in the pickle that we're headed for. So you got to solve that. Right. The good news is that if you solve that, it gives you a lot of revenue. Mm-hmm. And that revenue can be dedicated to, first of all, making sure that the effects are not harmful to lower income families. And second of all, to supporting the kind of infrastructure that needs to take place to address those concerns, whether it's wildfires out west or incoming tides along the shore, or, you know, drought and flood that's gone off the charts for Midwestern farmers. Everybody has their own problem, and with no resources, the problem just becomes much, much worse for working families.
Right. So, you know, we've had, and a lot of this that we're talking about has to do with flooding and climate change, but we've also seen just in the past couple days, our newspaper reported about chemicals in the soil that were put out by different manufacturers here in New Jersey, and it's impacting South Jersey, specifically Forever Chemicals. And yeah, you know, how that's treated and what kind of legislation there is now or that you're talking about, to, because we're worried about contamination of our drinking water. We're worried about what the lasting impact will be, even what cleanup of something like that looks like, and how we hold companies that are no longer even in business. How do we hold them accountable when we have this massive cleanup?
Yeah, well, there are funds for doing that, and where the companies have gone out of business, there's a combination of federal backstop and just shifting the liability to other companies in the chain of responsibility, mm-hmm. So that you can clean up, like a Superfund mm-hmm. site, for instance. It gets a little bit worse when you have a EPA that is bound and determined not to enforce the law against polluters, which we have under President Trump, and bound and determined to try to limit the Clean Water Act's protections, so that, for instance, if you're dumping poisonous stuff into an intermittent stream, and you know that every spring it's going to wash down into the public waters, but it's not constantly flowing, it's not a navigable water, the Trump EPA would have that out of EPA's jurisdiction, not covered by the Clean Water Act, even though you can look at your watch and pretty much tell when the rains are going to come that are going to pour all that poison down into the public waters. So there's a big enforcement issue in addition to just having Superfund and other cleanup liability.
Wow, yeah, that's really kind of what we're worried about. We're in such a beautiful part of the state, and we have so much agriculture here. We have an aquifer, Kirkwood-Cohansey Aquifer here in South Jersey, the Pine Barrens. We've got bird sanctuaries right in Brigantine and the Marine Mammal Stranding Center. And we're so reliant on tourism, as you are in Rhode Island as well, but it doesn't seem like we've really built our tourism in a way that enhances the natural beauty of South Jersey. How do you see us being able to balance that influx of visitors and drawing people to a state like yours or mine with kind of the desire to really protect the environment? How can we do two things like that at once? Because our economy is so reliant on it.
Well, I'm going to say something really blunt, and that is that we have to elect people like you to Congress, because there's as clear a distinction in politics on this issue as there is in any issue in politics. And that is that the fossil fuel industry has basically taken over the Republican Party. They tell them exactly what to do, and they always do it. And there's no pressure, because they're so powerful, that allows anybody else's voice to be heard. And that is what the problem has been. So the tourist economy that supports your district doesn't have the voice that the fossil fuel industry has, because the fossil fuel industry has been building this machinery to muscle and influence and bully politicians for decades. The coastal communities that you serve, the fishing communities, the businesses that attract seaside visitors, none of them have the political energy and clout that the fossil fuel industry has brought to bear to make sure that it wins every fight, and that it has a party that will do whatever it's told. So part of this is simply to diminish the power of the fossil fuel industry by diminishing the power of the Republican Party. And I'm sorry to be so blunt about that, because I work with a lot of colleagues on the Republican side. I do a lot of bipartisan work, but I've been here 12 years in the Senate now, and I have seen with my own eyes how the fossil fuel industry has captured and now runs the Republican Party on these issues that are so important. So if the local representative is willing to stand up and push back on the fossil fuel industry, the interests in the local community just are going to lose. And as long as you have fossil fuel dominion over these issues, local interests are going to continue to lose.
Well,
sorry to be that blunt.
I know. It's for me, having young children, I have Harper, who and Owen, Nora, Nellie, Marshall, and they're so passionate about the environment. And it just, Harper's at that age, a 12-year-old, middle school, where she's really thinking about these things. And right now she's trying very hard to change her diet and what she's eating to be more in line with her values about the environment, so that we're thinking about it all the time. And what do you suggest for, besides voting, which clearly you made the point that we need to have representatives who care about this, but what kind of suggestions can you make for the people who are watching, as if you told them kind of one thing, this would be the first thing, if you want to take this and make a difference, you need to start here?
Well, Your question reminds me of a woman who, I don't know if you ever had the chance to meet her. She would have loved you. Barbara Mikulski. Barbara Mikulski was the woman dean of the Senate. She had represented Maryland in the Senate for a long, 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 long time. She was funny. She was fierce. She was smart. I just loved her. And she retired, and we got Chris Van Hollen, which is great. But there was something very special about Barbara Mikulski. And she used to say, never agonize, organize.
That's it. I love
So
that.
when people are agonizing about the environment or some other issue, the easy solution is to organize, to go and find a group that aligns with your values and participate in that group so that everybody can amplify each other's voice. And if you wanted to make a long-term substantive fix, it would be to get rid of anonymous money in politics.
Yeah.
Because behind the screen of what we call dark money, very nasty hands are pulling strings and making mischief. And a lot of the mischief would go away if the public could see who was behind the masks and could understand what was really going on. So those are the two things: organize, and don't forget to clean up the dark money.
You've talked a lot about that, and with how that's really influencing our courts and the justices that are being approved now. Is that right?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. You've got a dark money funded organization that President Trump and his legal counsel admitted is selecting judges for them. A private organization funded by dark money that is selecting judges.
Wow.
And once they've selected them, they run political campaigns for them. And guess what? The organization that runs the political campaigns is funded by dark money. And then when they get on the court, groups come and bring cases before the court that are strategic for the interests behind them, funded by, you said it, dark money. And I've started to engage with the court and look around at what's going on around me. And I've noticed that in some of the cases I've gotten engaged in, some of the other, what they call friends of the court, amicus curiae, who are filing briefs but aren't parties, some of them, like a dozen at a time, are funded by the same groups.
Wow.
And guess what? The groups are funded by dark money.
Yeah.
So there's a very strong possibility, in fact, it's the likeliest possibility, that it's the same crew of funders who are selecting judges, campaigning for them, bringing cases before them, and providing a chorus of fake rhetorical support for the outcomes that they want. That's no way to run a judiciary.
Right. Thank you for being such a leader on this. This is fantastic. I understand the interplay of money and the environment. Can you tell me about how you see, when you take an environmental lens, how do you see that impacting some of the other major things that are happening right now when we look at equality, when we look at immigration, when we look at housing or the economy? Where do you see, if you're, because I know you're approaching all of these things, and when this is the space that you're coming from, you can kind of see each, as we often do with mental health and how it impacts kind of every area of life. When you look at other aspects like that and in the environment, what would you where do you see a lot of intersection?
Well, there's a huge overlay between the wealth or poverty of a community and the burden that it has to bear of a bad environment. Wealthy families and wealthy communities can either move to beautiful places that don't have environmental problems, or they can defend their communities against efforts to pollute the local environment. A poor community is trapped by their economic circumstance in areas that may not even be safe for their families. And when it comes time to have a fight over some entity that wants to do harm, they very often don't have the resources to fight back with anything like the clout and money of the big polluter. And if you add to that this business of the slap suit, which is a lawsuit that big polluters will file against people who've objected to what they're doing, that can really terrify somebody who doesn't have a lot of assets and suddenly is faced with their lawyer coming to say to them, hey, guess what? You've been sued. And this company has asked for millions of dollars in damages from you and everybody else who's objecting to what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very, very unfair and one-sided calculation on a sliding scale, with the worst end of it being reserved for the people with the least assets.
That's what I've seen to be true also, and I'm glad that you could put it into words in that way. You know, it's really been, I think, a struggle here, as I mentioned, from seeing the pollution that's happening, seeing where people are able to kind of preserve the very best assets in certain communities, and other areas are not just not maintained, not taken care of. They're not investing in things like the seawalls that would protect the community, or whatever else might be necessary at this time. I know I typically stick to half an hour. I want to ask you just two more questions before we wrap up. If you have any thoughts, because we are so agricultural, because we are focused right now on kind of our farming and what's happening, what do you think we could be or need to be doing differently when we approach farming that can still make it, we know how much it's a struggle already, and how do we build out or keep farms going, small farms, from kind of going under, yet still push them or nudge them toward more sustainable practices? How do we balance that?
Yeah, I think you've got to do two things. I think the agricultural megacorporations need to be controlled and reviewed for antitrust problems, to make sure that they're not using the strength of their economic power, their monopoly power, to put small farmers out of business.
Yeah.
I think the locavore movement for local produce, local meat, local fish, local farming has been a real boost. At least it has in Rhode Island for local farmers. So anything we can do to encourage that movement and to encourage that kind of consumption, I think is a huge help. And then we just announced a bipartisan Senate bill that would help create carbon credits for farmers.
Yeah.
So that when they farm in a way that helps reduce the carbon load on the planet, when they do the right thing, which they want to do,
Yes.
they're not being ignored when they do it. They actually get compensated for doing it because they can get a carbon credit for what they've saved. So, and that was a terrific bill with Mike Braun from Indiana, Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, Deb Stabenow from Michigan, and myself from Rhode Island. So it's a broad geographical base, it's a broad political base, but what we all have in common is wanting to make sure that farmers have a path to have their business model support their aspirations to be doing good things for the planet that they live so close to through their farming activities.
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Senator. That's great. I'm excited.
We're off to a good start. Hearing
Yes.
in 2 weeks in ag, I think.
Oh, well, my last question was just going to be, tell me something that makes you hopeful, because but that's a start, what you just were talking about. But, you know, I had this great professor in college. His name's Christopher Ewell. He at Penn State, an environmentalist, and I was one of his TAs, and that's how I got really excited. I didn't even ask you how you got really interested in the environment, but you know, it was hard for me to be in his class and see all that he knew and really understood about the environment and about the risk, and understand how he could still remain hopeful. And
Yeah.
so I want to just ask you that, how knowing and being so deeply involved in all of this, how do you remain hopeful? And what, just on that, that's it. What, give us,
First of all,
it's something we all want to do, but it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, being hopeful is part of the job when you represent people, because being hopeful gives you the motive and the inclination to try to find the angle that you can, you know, make progress through. You search out the colleague on the other side, the unexpected colleague who can work with you.
Yeah.
It's hope that is the, I think, most persistent motivator. So it's really important that people in our line of work, presuming your election, Amy, get, stay hopeful.
Yeah.
But I tell you what actually has made me really hopeful recently, it has been the protests. They started off on a really rough note with all the damage that was done in Minneapolis. We started off on a really rough note with a bad opening day in Rhode Island, where there was some damage around our capital city, Providence, Rhode Island. But the very next morning, as the sun came up, people were out on the street with dustpans and brooms and trash bags to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
And we went and had an even bigger protest after that, and there was no violence, no damage. We had protests across the state in Bristol and Barrington and Newport, and no incidents, no arrests, no damage, and big turnout, and a sense of real solemnity and purpose to it. And I think if you've got a government that has yielded too much to the capture of special interests, it's really hard to leverage other special interests against each other through that. What you really need is something that provokes the American public to stand up and say, hold it, we've had enough.
Yes.
We're taking this back. We're taking some ownership here.
Yeah.
And I see that happening right now. And it took a tragedy on the race issue to have provoked that. But what I'm seeing around the country right now and the way the population has moved, we're in a time of real change in America's trajectory.
Yeah.
And it's for the better.
Yes. Thank you. Well, we will definitely end there, because that is my hope. And I am really, again, just so grateful that you're leading this charge every day. And that you're there standing up for all of us. It's not just Rhode Island. You're helping the whole country move in the right direction. So thank you so much. And
well, get down here.
I will.
Get down here and be a part of it and represent New Jersey. Join Tom Malinowski as a swing district Democrat.
I will. Thank you so much. And stay cool down there.
Thank you, Amy.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care.